One of the biggest misconceptions is that I don't like Sierra games, and that could not be further from the truth. I love Sierra games. I have such a big love for games such as King's Quest and Space Quest. I may have grown up with LucasArts games, but I do still appreciate Sierra games for what they are. And where better to begin than the first game? King's Quest 1, Quest for the Crown.
Originally released in 1984, King's Quest was written by Sierra's fabled Roberta Williams, introducing yourselves to the heroic Graham and the lands of Daventry. The game was a massive hit and was known to be incredibly influential on the gaming industry. And so we begin our adventure of Daventry, ready to take on the... And I'm dead.
I'm going to talk about King's Quest for the next
14
minutes.
Movement in King's Quest, at least in the PC port, seems to be done by hitting the arrow keys. When an arrow is selected, Graham will then start walking in that direction until the button is pressed again to stop him. I didn't know this, so I watched helplessly as Graham just continued to walk into the water and then began to drown in what might be the most Sierra death to happen to me. Let's take this opportunity to talk about one of the things Sierra did differently from LucasArts: the deaths. The lands of Daventry are filled to the brim with dangers that Graham needs to avoid, lest he finds himself killed. While games by LucasArts were more lenient towards players, Sierra was considered a bit more drastic, allowing for many opportunities for the main character to die, resulting in a game over screen. As a result, Sierra became very infamous, and whenever people talk about the games, the first thing they tend to tell you is, remember to save frequently. And boy, is that not an exaggeration. Graham wanders through the world at a pace that might make a snail impatiently scream out to hurry up. The game does feature an option to change speeds, but from what I can tell, the speed option merely selects how much faster it will be until you kill Graham. This is not altered from the game in any way. This is what happens when you select the faster speed option. Speed also presents a problem whenever Graham runs afoul of an enemy. Whether they be wolf, ogre or sorcerer, they often have their mind set on killing Graham, leaving the knight only a short amount of time to escape, meaning that it's always best to keep Graham towards the edge of the screen so he can make a fast escape, or become fast food. Graham also finds friendly creatures such as his fairy godmother, who looks to help protect Graham during his journeys. You know, like she's done so well before. And for such a friendly creature, she makes a horrendous noise. Graham meets with the king, who asks the knight to go out and steal some shit. A magic mirror to predict the future, a magic shield that will protect you from harm, and a magic chest that will always be full of gold coins. In exchange for finding all these items, the king says he'll make Graham the king of the kingdom. The really weak and poor one. Great. Well, off we go across the lands of Daventry to do the king's dirty work and rob some other races of their items, like dragons, the Irish, and giants. Guess King Edward the Benevolent is only benevolent towards humans, if you know what I mean. The game doesn't boast too many characters, although a few will offer to help assist Graham in his quest, provided he help them first. Perhaps the most infamous puzzle arises from one such character, this gnome, who asks Graham to guess his name. But this is where the bullshittery commences. If you're actually well versed in fairy tales, you might recognise him as the character Rumpelstiltskin. And you can guess this, but it will still be incorrect. Instead, the player needs to follow some instructions found in the witch's home to think backwards. This seems like a leap, but sure, let's try Nixtimer. No, that doesn't work either. The solution to the puzzle is pretty convoluted, and instead, the player needs to work it out by reversing the alphabet itself and corresponding the letters using this method. Ah, of course. How could I forget? What also makes this puzzle all the more fun is the fact that the developers themselves seem to have misspelled his name, spelling it as Rumpelstiltskin rather than Rumpelstiltskin. Fortunately, the game itself realises the puzzle is asinine in every conceivable way and allows the player to proceed even if they don't get it right. If Graham guesses the gnome's name correctly, he receives magic beans to reach the giant's domain in the clouds. Otherwise, he gets a key that lets him walk up through a cave. Even the game knew this was bullshit. Now, this is a pretty relaxed and fair way of giving the player a break for not succeeding, but that's not something they should expect often. King's Quest can be a merciless experience for those unprepared. While I often make jokes about how Sierra games are infamous for their deaths, this is not actually my grievance with the company. I don't think death is a particularly bad aspect in gaming, and while I do prefer LucasArts' approach, I do often feel the tone can require deaths. In a video I made on Broken Sword Director's Cut, I lamented the removal of these deaths, as it removed a lot of tension and comedy from the game. So do I think that King's Quest would benefit from removing deaths? No, not at all. I think the infamous deaths are part of Sierra's charms, and while it might not work for a game like Monkey Island, I feel that this oozes with the game's personality. No, it isn't the deaths that are my issues with the Sierra games. What truly gripes me are the unwinnable scenarios that Sierra games were infamous for. While LucasArts games encouraged exploration without fear of punishment, Sierra decided to take this to the next level. Not only could you find yourself dying in Sierra games quite frequently, you could also find yourself placing yourself into some truly unwinnable scenarios. King's Quest is no exception to this. The most prominent part that I can see being found after taking a bird to a far off location. At this point, if you have not completed other tasks to receive cheese, a 4-leaf clover, or a fiddle by this point, then you have lost, and you likely won't even know it yet. Down in a hole which surprisingly doesn't kill Graham directly, like everything else in this game, he finds himself up against a rat that blocks his way through the door. If Graham doesn't have treasure or cheese to give to the rat, then he finds himself trapped with no way out. Welcome to Dead End number 1. However, if he does, he can go through the door, where he encounters 2 leprechauns. In order to prevent them from grabbing him and causing a game over, he needs to have a 4-leaf clover or the fiddle, or he encounters Dead End number 2.
You might think it's a bit harsh for the game to throw 2 dead ends at you at the same time, but I just wanted to reassure you, but that's not the case. It's not 2 dead ends at all. It's free.
Just before jumping down the hole, Graham needs to make sure to grab a nearby mushroom to the west, or he encounters Dead End number 3. At the end of the leprechaun cave is a small hole that is too tiny for Graham to squeeze out of. However, the mushroom will shrink him enough to help him through the cave. If he doesn't, then he's trapped down there in the cave for the rest of his life. Alone.
Dead End number 3. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be a masochist to enjoy Sierra games. Not at all. But what I am saying is you probably find as much enjoyment hooking up a car battery to your tatas.
I sincerely love Sierra games, but I often find myself dissatisfied with puzzles that result in impossible scenarios like this. and there's a reason why many modern games now prevent this. However, while I'm rather negative about the aspects of the game's flow of logic, I do also want to talk about one of the things that is most impressive about King's Quest: the use of different solutions to puzzles. You may notice that there is a point system at the top of the screen, as was common with a lot of adventure games in this period. When Graham takes an action, such as advancing the plot or solving a puzzle, he may receive some points. Points are, of course, meaningless, and don't impact the game other than to help give you an inflated ego at the end of the game. However, some actions result in more points than others. Graham can combat his enemies using weapons to ruthlessly kill them in order to take what he needs, such as using the dagger on the dragon or slaying the giant using a slingshot. However, these don't provide the most points. Instead, Graham can take more pacifist routes, such as throwing water on the dragon or sneaking by it, or by waiting for the giant to fall asleep, providing the player with a higher score. It's interesting to have multiple solutions to puzzles, and that's something I have the highest praise for in the game. If anything, my criticism comes from simply the strange puzzles and the unwinnable circumstances. But fortunately for me, there exists other versions of the game. In 1990, Sierra released a remake of the game, although I wasn't able to find this version. What I did find, however, was a fan remake released in 2001 by AGF Interactive, who updated the game to play more like King's Quest V and Space Quest 4, using a point-and-click interface rather than a typing parser. Not only did I find the ability to point-and-click a much better change, but the game also provided an option to remove moments of dead ends. Rather than allow Graham to get himself stuck like some sort of cat in the wall, the game won't allow him to proceed without the items given. Now, that isn't to say that the deaths were removed in this version. In fact, Graham can still find himself dying a lot in this game, although certainly not to the same extent as the original. The game also changes the story, so that the 3 treasures Graham gathers were long lost Daventry treasures. In fact, it also changes the gnome scenario to allow you to use Nebulasnails as his name, which makes a hell of a lot more sense. For me, this is an absolute welcome sight, and was my preferable way to play the game. And since AGD Interactive remade King's Quest 2 and 3, this will likely be my way of playing them too. With all 3 items pilfered, Graham returns back to the castle where the king dies and announces Graham as his successor. After taking what is probably a millisecond to remember his dear departed king, Graham then rips the crown from the still warm body of Edward and sits upon the throne, triumphantly ending the game. Want to make sure you don't miss out on the next video when it's released? Then make sure you don't forget to subscribe to Noir Reservoir and click that little bell down there to keep up to date on all future Noir Reservoir videos. Likes and comments are always appreciated too. So until next time, my friends, I'll catch you later. Bye bye.